Research shows older men miss 97% of female approach signals. The question isn't random, it's a carefully designed psychological test. And the moment you answer it wrong, she's already gone. Here's what nobody tells you about aging as a man. Somewhere between 35 and 50, something shifts. You stop looking for signals. You stop believing younger women see you as sexual. You've been conditioned by a culture that worships youth to believe your value expired with your 20s. So when a 24-year-old woman asks you a seemingly innocent question at a coffee shop, you don't see it. You answer like a colleague, like a mentor, like someone who's aged out of the game, and she walks away disappointed. Not because you're older, but because you didn't recognize what she was really asking. This matters because attraction doesn't retire when you hit 40. Male sexual market value, when built correctly, peaks later than you've been told. Experience becomes currency. Stability becomes magnetic. Emotional control becomes rare. But only if you can read the language. Only if you understand that women don't approach men the way men approach women. They test, they probe, they ask questions that sound like small talk, but function as psychological auditions. And the men who recognize this, who understand the subtext beneath the text, they live in a different reality than the men who don't. They see opportunities where others see politeness. They create tension where others create friendships. They remain sexual beings long after their peers have surrendered to invisibility. This isn't about manipulation, it's about awareness. It's about understanding that when a woman asks you a specific type of question, she's not gathering information, she's creating an opportunity for you to display something she can't directly request. Behavioral psychology has a term for this: covert signaling. Humans, especially women in sexual selection contexts, communicate interest through indirect channels to avoid the social cost of rejection. Direct approach carries risk. If she says, "I find you attractive," and you don't reciprocate, she experiences public failure. So evolution designed something more elegant, a system of plausible deniability. She asks a question that seems neutral. If you respond with awareness, the interaction escalates. If you don't, she can retreat without having exposed her intent. She never technically hit on you. She just asked a question. Studies in evolutionary psychology show that women use covert strategies up to 80% more frequently than men when initiating romantic contact. The reason is simple. Throughout human history, women who protected their reputation while still securing high-value mates had better survival outcomes. Overt sexuality carried social punishment. Covert sexuality carried social protection with sexual opportunity. So the behavior became hardwired, and it still operates today, even in environments where the original evolutionary pressure no longer exists. The question she asks isn't about the information. It's about your reaction to being tested. It's about whether you can hold frame under social ambiguity, whether you can recognize subtext, whether you still see yourself as a sexual option. Most older men fail this immediately, not because they lack intelligence, but because they've internalized a narrative about age and attraction that blinds them to reality. They believe the Disney version. They believe women want safety and friendship and emotional connection above all else. And while those things matter, they matter second. First, she needs to feel something: tension, curiosity, a sense that you exist in a different category than the other men she encounters daily. And that starts with how you interpret her question. Picture this. You're in a bookstore. Midweek afternoon, you're scanning the philosophy section, holding a worn copy of Meditations. A woman approaches. Mid-20s, confident posture. She's holding a book on Stoicism. She doesn't ask what you're reading. She asks something else. Do you actually live by this stuff, or is it just intellectual? Now, most men hear that question and think she's asking about philosophy, so they answer philosophically. They explain Stoic principles. They talk about Marcus Aurelius. They give her a lecture she didn't request, and she nods politely, thanks him, walks away. He thinks he had a nice conversation about books. He has no idea what just happened. But here's what she actually asked. She asked, "Are you the kind of man who has internal structure, or are you performing?" She asked, "Do you have emotional control, or are you hiding?" She asked, "Are you interesting enough to make me want to know more?" And by answering the surface question, he failed the real test because the correct answer isn't about stoicism. It's about demonstrating that you understand she's not asking about stoicism. This is the pattern older men miss. Women don't ask formational questions when they're attracted. They ask relational questions disguised as informational ones. And the disguise is intentional. It filters for men who can read subtext, men who can hold tension, men who won't rush to comfort her with answers. Let's break it down. The question she asks usually falls into one of four categories. Each category tests something specific. Category 1, the lifestyle probe. Do you come here often? Are you always reading at coffee shops? Is this your usual spot? Surface level, she's asking about your routine. Real level, she's asking if you're the kind of man who has structure without rigidity. If you're consistent but not predictable. If you have a life she could imagine entering without dominating. Category 2, the identity challenge. Do you actually believe that? Are you really into this or just curious? Is this something you take seriously? Surface level, she's questioning your commitment to an idea. Real level, she's testing whether you defend yourself or remain unbothered, whether you need her validation, whether you have internal certainty. Category 3, the ambiguity test. What are you doing after this? Do you have plans tonight? Are you busy later? Surface level, she's asking about your schedule. Real level, she's creating an opening for you to invite escalation. She's checking if you can read an opportunity and act on it without overthinking. Category 4, the experience filter. Have you always been like this? Were you different when you were younger? Do you think people change? Surface level, she's asking about your past. Real level, she's checking if you're comfortable with who you become, if you have regret or acceptance, if you carry your age with dignity or apology. Here's the critical insight. In every case, the wrong answer is the literal answer. The literal answer kills tension. It gives her certainty, and certainty kills attraction in the early stages. She doesn't want to know your schedule. She wants to feel uncertain about whether you'll create an opportunity. She doesn't want your life story. She wants to feel curious about what shaped you. She doesn't want validation of her question. She wants to feel something shift in the space between you. And that shift only happens when you answer the question she's really asking. So how do you answer? Not with a formula, not with a scripted line, but with a shift in frame. You answer in a way that acknowledges the subtext without explicitly naming it. Let's go back to the bookstore. She asks, do you actually live by this stuff, or is it just intellectual? Here's what most men say. Yeah, I try to apply Stoic principles daily. It's really changed how I handle stress. Logical, sincere, rapport building, and completely unattractive. Here's what a man who understands the game says. If I told you I did, you'd think I was posturing. If I said I didn't, you'd wonder why I'm reading it. Slight smile. So I'll let you decide. Now watch what happens. He didn't answer her question. He turned it back into tension. He made her curious. He demonstrated that he's not performing for her approval, and most importantly, he signaled that he knows she's testing him. That's the difference. The man who answers literally is trying to be liked. The man who answers with tension is comfortable being evaluated, and women are attracted to men who are comfortable being evaluated because it signals you've been evaluated before and past. Here's where older men have a structural advantage they don't realize. Younger men have to fake this. They have to pretend they're unbothered, pretend they have options, pretend they've seen enough to be unimpressed. But you don't have to pretend. You've lived it. You've been rejected and survived. You've had relationships end and rebuilt. You've seen enough attraction cycles to know that desperation repels and indifference attracts. The problem is most older men abandon this knowledge. They see a younger woman and revert to scarcity mindset. They think this might be my last chance. They think I need to be safe and non-threatening. They think I should be grateful she's even talking to me. And all of that leaks into their tonality, into their eye contact, into how quickly they respond, into how much they explain. She feels it immediately, not as conscious thought, as instinct. And instinct says he doesn't believe he's valuable. So she exits, not rudely, just away. But the man who has internalized his value, the man who knows that age, when carried correctly, is an advantage. He doesn't rush to comfort her. He doesn't feel silence. He doesn't explain himself. He creates space. And in that space, she feels something she rarely feels with men her age. Calm, certainty, a sense that you're not trying to win her. You're evaluating whether she's worth your time. And paradoxically, that makes her try to win you. This is where most men lose. She asks the question. You give a response that creates tension. And then comes the pause, the silence, the moment where most men panic and fill the space with more words, more explanation, more rapport building, and the spell breaks. Because silence is the testing ground. It's where she sees if you're comfortable with discomfort, if you can hold tension without relieving it, if you trust that the space between words carries as much meaning as the words themselves. Younger men can't do this. They're too hungry, too desperate to be liked, too afraid she'll lose interest if they don't keep performing. But you're not young. You've sat through enough uncomfortable silences to know they don't kill you. You've had enough conversations to know that the person who speaks first often loses frame. You've learned that attraction builds in the space where certainty dissolves. So when she asks her question and you respond with tension, and the silence comes, you hold it. You don't smile nervously. You don't ask a follow-up question. You don't rescue her from the discomfort. You let her sit in it and watch what she does next. If she's really interested, she'll fill the silence with another question, another test, another opportunity for you to demonstrate that you're not like the others. If she's not interested, she'll exit gracefully. And either way, you've maintained your value. You haven't chased, you haven't explained, you haven't apologized for taking up space. You've simply existed as a man who knows his worth. Let's run through the 4 question types with responses that create tension instead of comfort. Lifestyle probe her. Do you come here often? Wrong. Yeah, almost every Tuesday. It's my favorite spot. Right. Often enough to recognize the regulars. Not often enough to become one. Jackass identity challenge. Her. Do you actually believe that? Wrong. Absolutely. I've been into stoicism for 5 years now. Right. I believe enough to live by it. Whether that convinces you is your problem, not mine. See? Ambiguity test. Hair. What are you doing after this? Wrong. Nothing much. Probably just heading home. Right. That depends on what happens in the next 5 minutes. Experience filter. Her. Have you always been like this? Wrong. No. I used to be way more anxious when I was younger. Right. I've been worse. I've been better. Right now, I'm here. Notice the pattern. Every response creates more questions than it answers. Every response demonstrates comfort with ambiguity. Every response signals that you're not performing for approval, and every response treats the interaction as something that might or might not continue based on mutual interest, not your desperate hope. Here's what this is really about. It's not about landing younger women. It's not about proving you're still attractive. It's about refusing to become invisible. Society wants older men to step aside, to become mentors and advisors and sexless father figures, to accept that your romantic and sexual life ended when you turned 45. And most men comply not because they lose attraction, but because they lose belief that they're still attractive. They internalize the message. They stop seeing the signals. They stop recognizing when a woman creates an opening, and they disappear into a life of quiet resignation. But you don't have to. The question she asks isn't random. It's an invitation disguised as curiosity. And the moment you recognize it as such, everything changes. You're not the older guy trying to stay relevant. You're the man who understands something younger men don't. That attraction is built on tension, not comfort, on mystery, not transparency, on internal certainty, not external validation. And that never expires. It just gets refined. So the next time a woman asks you a question that seems innocent, pause. Don't rush to answer. Don't fill the silence. Don't explain yourself. Ask yourself, what is she really testing? And respond to that not with a scripted line, but with the quiet confidence of a man who knows he has nothing to prove, because that's what she's actually looking for. Not your resume, not your explanations, not your eagerness, your ability to hold frame when she creates uncertainty, your ability to exist as a sexual being without apology, your ability to recognize that age when carried with dignity is not a disadvantage. It's a filter. It separates the women who want safety from the women who want depth. And the women who want depth, they're still asking the question. You just have to know what they're really asking. 97% of old men don't realize that when she asks, "Do you actually live by this stuff?" she's not asking about philosophy. She's asking if you still live like a man who believes he has something to offer. And your answer determines whether she keeps asking questions or walks away to find someone who does.